So, AI, it's a hot topic. Seems that every news article, every story, office conversations, they all revolve around AI. So like any hot topic, it's one of those concepts that it's subject to heaps of misinformation, media, buzzwords, lots of hype. That's unfortunate because it's a real significant technology. It's very transformative. And I truly believe that in order to really understand something like AI, you need to look at it from both the details and the big picture. So I guess first things first, I'd like to see my slide. There we go. What is AI? Has anybody ever tried to really define what AI means? The person who invented copy and paste, this is called Tesler's law. He says AI is whatever hasn't been done yet. And this is in reference to something called the AI effect. We're constantly redefining what AI actually means. And we tend to discount it once it solves a problem that we originally thought only humans could do it. Once a computer can do it, it's no longer intelligent. It's just a computer. That's Garry Kasparov, famous chess champion, and he famously lost to a computer. And that was a big milestone in AI at the time. But soon after, people were saying, well, it's not really thinking. It's just using brute force methods to play chess. So that's not thinking. This is important to keep in mind. Like, we're constantly redefining AI. And we're redefining what it actually means to it's always in opposition to what humans can do, what computers can't do. We tend to define it based on what it can do rather than what it is. So there's a name for this. There's another aspect of this called the ELIZA effect. This is something to be aware of too, is that we tend to use sort of magical thinking about AI. This is a chatbot written in the 60s. It's very similar to it's like a psychiatrist. You say, I'm not feeling well, it'll repeat back to you. It'll say, well, why aren't you feeling well? It's pretty predictable, but everybody who was using this, there are quite a few people who thought the computer was genuinely understanding them and genuinely felt what I was feeling, even though they knew how it worked. So there's a bit of human psychology playing tricks on ourselves. We tend to be convinced by text-based interfaces that appear to be human. The simplest example, I guess, is if you get something out of an ATM and it says thank you, there is a part of your brain that feels genuine, like somebody's genuinely thanked you for taking money out of the machine, even though we know rationally it's just words on a screen. AI has been around for a very long time. It's a hot topic now, but the first use of the term AI in the modern sense came out of this conference in the 50s. So this was about 10 years after NATA was established. And another popular term at the time was thinking machines. But it's this idea that human thought and human things could be turned into a series of logical steps, so they could be simulated by a machine. So why are we talking about it now? Why is it such a big deal now? There's a term for that too. It's called the AI summer. So if AI has been around for a very long time, it goes through these periods of mass appeal, mass research and investment, mainstream stories, and it's happened before. Right now, we're in the so-called AI summer. And AI summers are described the periods where there's lots of research into AI, lots of applications, and lots of hype and interesting things coming out of it. So why are we in the AI summer now? One of the ISO standards about AI, the concepts and terminology standard, it basically attributes this to the advancements in computing capacity that we have now. One of the biggest factors, though, is that we have more data than we can deal with. Like data science itself needed to be invented to deal with the types of data that we're dealing with today. There's too much, and there's so much data that we can barely make sense of it. And there's also been quite a few advancements in the actual algorithms used to process that data. So I guess the question is, if we're in a hype cycle right now, how long will this AI summer last? people are beginning to distrust AI. These results come from a survey, a company that researches trust in things like technologies and governments and things like that. And even amongst people who really support the tech industry, we're finding that people are really mistrusting AI lately. So there's a statistic there about, even though 3/4 of people in the survey really trusted the tech industry, only half of them trust AI. So why is this? That trust can be shifted. If people believe that a given technology, like AI or GMO foods or gene-based medicine, things like that, if they're distrustful of new things like that, what earns their trust is if those new technologies have been evaluated by people who know what they're doing, so scientists, ethicists, and they also shift their trust on things based on is that technology effectively regulated? So has the technology been vetted by knowledgeable, competent people, and is it mandated in some way, that regulated to protect not just the technology itself and the validity of that technology, but also the wider societal effects? AI touches on it's not just a computer thing. It touches on the ways we work, the way we do work. It touches on human rights. So all of these things need to be under a regulatory framework. And the conclusion of this study is that people would trust AI more if they actually understood it. What does AI actually do? What does it mean? And that those AI systems have been tested thoroughly, and that society has considered all those who would be adversely affected by this technology. So I haven't defined AI yet. The working definition of AI, which is being used in the regulations that are being developed right now, AI itself is a discipline. AI is just a field of research, like data science or chemistry. It's a field of research. Most of the time when we think of AIs, we're really talking about AI systems, and those are the implementation of some sort of AI system. Implementation of AI is an AI system. So ChatGPT, image recognition, things like that. So most AI systems, they operate under this model. When you think of AI, for most intents and purposes, AI is machine learning by another name. And most AI systems, like the ones that might be used in a lab, they'd operate under this sort of model. So what characterizes an AI system is that it takes heaps of data, that data is modeled, and that model itself is producing these statistical predictions and probabilities, recommendations, things like that. So that's what distinguishes an AI system from a typical piece of software. I'll contrast it with something people might be more familiar with. Autocorrect, everybody knows autocorrect. The way autocorrect actually works is it's just looking at word frequency in a given piece of text. So if you write the words "I like," the next most likely word you're likely to write is "you." You're very unlikely to write "I like being pumpkins." Autocorrect is very predictable. It's very linear. And it pretty much gives the same response every time, depending on what the input is. AI is a little different. It's a different way of solving problems. And I like this conceptual model as AI systems are just pattern recognition machines. Everybody's done one of these prove you're human prompts. You have to select what the traffic lights are. The idea behind AI is that you showed enough examples of something, and eventually it gets fed into like an AI model, and eventually the AI will distinguish what that item is. Just for your information, that big model right there, that's the T in ChatGPT. So knowing this, like, AI is not really thinking. It's just being shown examples and examples and examples, and eventually the idea being that it discovers its own rules about the patterns that it sees. This is a meme, but in reality, what AI would be doing is putting all of these images into different categories and turning that into mathematical representations of things, and it's looking at what words are most similar to what other words, or what patterns are most similar to other patterns. So every bit of information in an AI system, essentially what's going on at the core is it's dividing all the data into these columns of vectors, and it's doing vector calculus, vector statistics. That's all it's doing. It's just spitting out an answer. It's discovering associations between data. It's a pattern recognition machine. This diagram was fed the contents of the English Wikipedia, and it wasn't told anything about what a lot of these words actually mean, but it's discovered these associations between all these words, just because it's been given so many examples of web pages that have these words and how they link to each other, and it's discovering these associations. Compared to a normal computer program, this is the biggest distinguishing characteristic, is that any output from an AI system is probabilistic. It doesn't give the same answer every time. It gives these sort of types of outputs. It'll, if you use it in manufacturing, it might say, this part is 97% likely to not conform with our specs. This is characteristic of all AI system outputs, and this comes out of the inner workings, where it's just doing statistical inference. AI systems are driven by the data that goes into them. Unlike a traditional computer algorithm, like autocorrect, those rely on things like logical rules. If this, then that. AI is a different way of approaching problem solving. It's based on data. All the misconceptions about AI lead to situations like this. People might have seen this story where some lawyers used ChatGPT to write a legal briefing. The legal briefing looked like it was truthful, it looked like it was valid, but AI systems aren't actually thinking, they're just generating what they think looks like the truth. I really love this quote about ChatGPT in particular. It has no truth filter. AI systems don't have a truth filter. They're not search engines. They're a text generator. ChatGPT is a text generator. It just works on probabilities. And so these sort of misconceptions about AI, it leads to certain funny situations, I guess. Like they're trying to cram AI into everything these days. Right now, AI language models are being put into Google searches in Bing, where it tells you, Australia doesn't exist. If they're being trained on things like Reddit or forums, it'll say, oh, you should smoke while you're pregnant. That's good. You should put glue on your pizza. It can't distinguish what's truthful, what's a joke, what's not. It's just being told to predict patterns in the data that it sees. So these are funny, but sometimes it gets pretty serious, where AI is now appearing in peer-reviewed journals. And it's getting past the peer-reviewed stage. The first one's pretty obvious, where it just says, I'm very sorry, I don't have access to real-time information. I am an AI language model. But there are certain sort of characteristic phrases that ChatGPT uses, some language models use, that are getting their way into peer-reviewed journals. And it's happening these are just two examples. There's heaps of examples out there, but the misconception of AI as a thinking machine rather than a pattern recognition machine leads to situations like this, career limiting, perhaps. So if we know that AI is a pattern recognition machine, how might an accredited lab use it? Eurolab, which is it's a European association of labs, they wrote a paper on AI a few years ago talking about how would AI fit into conformity assessment. And they've divided it into these two main categories. So there's indirect conformity assessment and direct. Indirect conformity assessment is the state of play right now. If you use AI in a lab, you're using it to support your decisions. And when we accredit an organization that uses AI, the accreditation isn't about the AI, it's about the organization. But if we might imagine a future in which the AI itself is making decisions about conformity and issuing its own reports, absent of human oversight. Eurolab seems to think that our current models of accreditation don't apply. We accredit organizations. We don't accredit AI systems as such. If it's a pattern recognition machine, what's the most obvious use case is image analysis, qualitative work. There's just a range of applications that might already be used by accredited labs. It's really good at summarizing heaps of text. You might consider feeding an entire management system into a language model and turning that into like a training chatbot or something for your staff. Eventually, you might even be able to ask it whether your management system conforms with 17025. If it's used in image analysis, I talked about indirect AI-supported decision-making. It might tell you, based on an image that's obtained by the lab, that there's a probability of an area of interest to be verified by a human competent pathologist. This type of arrangement is either happening right now or likely to happen very soon. Like any new technology, it's very powerful. So there's been a lot of push for regulation. A lot of the standards that are being developed around AI are being driven by this EU AI Act, recently passed. They're going to establish an AI regulator in Europe. And this is being modeled after the existing data privacy regulator, which means that this regulator will have teeth. It will be able to fine companies, millions and millions of dollars for violating the regulations. And this AI Act, this AI regulator for the EU, will also apply to any organization doing work for the EU. So it could be relevant. It will be relevant to Australian facilities as well. The way they think about AI and regulating AI is dividing it on risk levels. So the outcome, there's certain types of AI systems that will be outright prohibited because they're too risky. There's potential to violate human rights in some way. So one of the applications that will be outright restricted in Europe would be remote biometric ID. You can imagine a crowd of thousands of people being instantly ID'd personally and fed into some database. It violates the right to privacy. That type of thing will be outright prohibited. Everything else, most stuff will be under high risk. And this is the high-risk AI systems are the type of things that would be subject to accredited conformity assessment, like verification, validation. And there's obligations on the organizations that do it. And there's also low-risk things, customer assistance, chatbots, things like that. But this is how they're thinking of AI systems based on the risk levels. In Australia, we don't have an AI regulation in place just yet, but ASIC recognizes that there are existing laws that apply, whether you use AI or not. If you're an organization that does work in the financial sector, you're already subject to these sort of laws about privacy of the data, intellectual property. All of those laws still apply. But they do support a move to a more AI-specific regulation. And they'd be likely modeled after this. This is the Australia's AI ethics principles. Right now, it's a voluntary framework. And it's guidance for organizations to use AI. And all of these aspects of this framework, all of these will be associated with an ISO standard at some point. Some of these are already under development, but these sort of features of a regulator, these are the types of things that are AI specific that would be subject to regulation. You can't regulate a new technology without standards. So there's heaps of standards being developed right now. Standards Australia has IT43. And that, in turn, represents Australia at the international level. All the standards right now are being developed by ISO. This is the list of the stakeholders on the Australian committee. And I just wanted to illustrate it because it shows AI systems are not just something for computer people or laboratory people. There's people in there that represent ethics bodies, consumer ethics. There's international trade representatives there. So it's something that affects a lot of different aspects of society, and that's why they're listed as stakeholders. There's heaps of standards being developed. They're all at various stages. Some of them are technical. Some of them deal with testing of AI systems and verification of AI systems, but they also deal with the societal concerns of AI systems, like ethical, ethics, bias in the data. All of these are being developed right now. I'm just going to highlight a few of them. Jennifer mentioned this one earlier. This one's very useful, especially for an accredited facility. It's been published recently. and it gives you guidance on how to implement AI systems at an organization. And it really emphasizes the fact that AI systems represent a unique form of risk to an organization. Once AI systems become more prevalent, the day of the yearly risk review will be over. It really emphasizes that risk is dynamic in AI, and there will be new obligations for you as a facility. If there's nothing else you remember from my talk today, that thing in the blue, that's been emphasized all over this standard, all over a lot of the AI standards, is that AI, unlike a traditional computer program, they give you different outputs on the same input. It's probabilistic. And again, this standard emphasizes the need for human oversight. It talks about establishing a risk committee or an AI-specific committee about this. And they really emphasize accountability and lines of accountability. You'll see this again. This from that IBM presentation that Jennifer showed. And this principle holds true today. The other one, this is a big flagship standard being released. It's AI management systems. This is the standard that you could be certified to externally. And this is the type of thing that would be under the AI regulations. If you're an organization using AI, you'd be obligated maybe to be certified to this standard. This management system standard also refers to other ISO standards that are being developed. That things like AI system impact assessment is a big one. That's another thing that will be required by the European regulations. So there's a lot of support systems of standards being developed. And we're even developing the standards for accrediting the people who certify AI management systems. We don't have to wait for all these new standards to come out or new regulations to come out to deal with AI systems today in a model of accreditation. Under NATA's existing accreditation standards, all of these requirements in their existing standards, the principles still apply. There might just be more of a focus on them in a future where you're using an AI system in a laboratory setting. So verification and validation of the system, there'll be more of an emphasis on those sort of requirements. Due to the organizational risks of using AI, there'll be a greater focus on lines of accountability, lines of authority. All of those sort of requirements already exist in our existing accreditation standards. And I mentioned AI is data-driven. All the requirements about how you handle data, what you do with it, what you do when you're done with it, all of those principles will still apply. And there just might be a greater emphasis on this, depending on how that AI system is being used in the laboratory. Sorry. I mentioned, so can you trust an organization that uses AI? Well, that really depends. It depends on whether there's a support structure in place to ensure that trust. Accreditation, a peer review model-based accreditation, safeguards the trust of an accredited organization. And that model will continue to work well. And NATA has been around for a long time. We've dealt with new technologies again and again. Those same principles apply. Just some final remarks about this. I mentioned the changing definitions of AI. It doesn't actually need to be labeled AI to be considered an AI system. The European regs and the standards go into that in a little bit more detail, but AI systems are defined by the characteristics of their outputs, basically. So it's more likely that if you encounter AI in a laboratory setting, it's likely to be a component of a larger product. Image analysis built into a LIMS software might be based on machine learning. That would be considered AI. Going forward, verification and validation of things will become more critical. AI systems are a tool. They're analogous to like a test method. It needs to be validated at doing what it's supposed to do. If you're purchasing an AI system as an accredited lab, you have to prove that your lab can use it properly and that you as a lab know its limitations and its capabilities. It's quite likely that accredited facilities are already using AI in some way. Even if your staff are using ChatGPT, off to the side, or if you're using AI built into an existing limbs, it's possible you're already using it in some way. And to safeguard trust in AI systems, that survey mentioned that people will trust AI systems as long as they know that it's been vetted properly by competent people, scientists and ethicists, and that's all done under a regulatory framework that demands it. So in my opinion, I guess, any future regulations in Australia, they need to demand some sort of accredited testing or validation of these AI systems. Thank you.
One that fascinates me, given my background, and the question is the media, in your opinion, is the media helping or hindering AI's development?
I think it's promoting the use of AI. I think helping or hindering, it really depends on how it's being reported. But I think there is a tendency, especially since the release of ChatGPT, there's a tendency to make it seem like a magic machine that does thinking for you, and not enough stories about what it actually is and what are the actual limitations of it.
So how do we change that?
Well, outside of my expertise, but I think the more mass awareness of these sort of limitations, I think, would maybe change how it's perceived. I'm not familiar with how the media, truth in media is regulated, but I think if a more honest approach would be good. More, less fluff, more
less sensation.
Less sensation,
okay.
More actual facts. Yes.
Okay. Another question. What are your views on validating AI in regulatory laboratories using some principles of computerized system validations?
Those principles are being adopted into, there are ISO standards in development about verification and validation of AI, and they are being directly informed by the existing standards on validating software. Yeah.
Another one. How effective can regulation be when it comes to AI? And if I can embellish that question a little bit, no matter how tough the regulations are, somebody will always be able to circumvent them.
One of the, I guess it comes to mind, one of the aspects of the European AI regulation is that they are very serious about making it effective, and they're basing it off of the data privacy regulator. Every time you see a news story about Google or Meta or Twitter being fined hundreds and hundreds of millions of dollars, it's usually because of the data privacy regulator. They're very serious about making penalties real and substantive. So, yeah.
You talked in your address about trust, and I noticed earlier today that there was a survey done last year that found that 61% of people are wary of AI.
Yeah.
You had, in fact, I think
that
you
was,
had
that was the study. Yeah,
yeah, you had a higher figure.
Yeah.
So, how do you change that? How do you convince people? And I'm talking here as a layman. I mean, these people here have a greater understanding, I'm sure, of AI and its use than I do. I mean, you're talking to a technical Luddite. But how do you change that or increase that 61% so that more people trust it to the point that they're prepared to use it? And people being, and I'm dragging the question out, I suppose, but from individuals to companies, like NATA, for example.
I think if people are, so one of the aspects of that study that came out is that people would trust it more if they understood it more. I think if people spent effort to just inform themselves about AI, don't be intimidated by the concepts. It's I'm not a computer science person by background, but I do understand accreditation. I do understand how laboratories work. Everything I've learned about AI has been through just discussing with people, having a genuine curiosity about it, and being hesitant to hype it up as a magic box, basically.
And this is one of my questions.
Yeah.
What are your reservations?
My reservations about AI, personally, this is just me personally speaking, I do believe that in a few years we might stop talking about AI as such a hot topic, but we will be using it whether we know it or not. And my personal reservations are that the idea that AI is actually thinking, I don't want that sort of conception to be mainstream. I want more people to recognize it as what it is. It's a tool for data analysis, and I just like that idea to become more mainstream, I suppose.
Last question: is NATA using AI?
Not directly, no. Whenever we use Google Maps, like all of our assessors travel around Google Maps. Every time it tells you the best route to somewhere, that's using AI. Internally, no, but we do have internal projects looking into how we could use it. Yes.
Fascinating.
Yeah.
Would you thank Nick, ladies and gentlemen? Thank you.
Thanks.